Okay, and we're going to have Jake talk about Intel's vision on cloud computing.
First of all, thank you very much. My name is Jake Smith. It's an honor to be here. It has been a long time since I've got to talk about I/O and talk about protocol stacks. Goes back almost 15 years when Jim Ryan and I had an opportunity to deploy the first ever production storage area network at a little company called Sequent Computer Systems way back in the day. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a member of Intel's Advanced Server Technologies team. I look at our products that we're deploying out in 2014, 2015. Also look at technologies that are changing the face of the data center. And my focus has been for the last several years on virtualization and cloud computing. So I've had an opportunity to work with many of you as well as figure out how do we make this hype machine that is cloud real. I'm here to say it's very real, and it's not just a hype machine. There's a lot of very real technologies that you guys have been discussing throughout this 3-day session. I've read some of the topic work. Paul, who I've heard speak before, did an outstanding job in my mind of outlining some of the critical issues that will face us moving forward. So I prefer to be very interactive. I'm going to be walking around a little bit, so please ask questions as they come up. Some of this stuff you'll say, well, geez, I could have just downloaded this off the internet, and you're right, you could have. The value of this conversation is in the editorial comments that I make, and hopefully provide some insights into where Intel is going and what we're doing. I will answer anything that I can answer that is public and we can talk about at this point, and then I'll probably be pretty cagey about anything I can. All right. By 2015, this is what we're fairly confident of. This number, I think, is very low. The events in North Africa, the events that are happening on a global market, will actually accelerate. We will have over 1.5 to 1.75 billion new users join the internet over the next 5 years. Okay, we will follow that with probably some degree of inflation, which will follow the building out of communications networks on a global basis, particularly in third world undereducated countries. That we know. Okay, companies, countries. I'm not sure there's much of a difference anymore. However, what we don't know is we don't know whether these 15 billion connected devices will be smartphones, whether they'll be PCs, whether they'll be smart displays, whether they'll be projectors, whether they'll be the traditional server infrastructures that we've all looking around the room. Very few of us are under the age of 30. If you are, raise your hand. That answers that question. So we will be in a very new environment for us. The interesting part to me that this organization that got me excited when Jim asked me to come speak was the Fabrics Alliance is going to drive the data side. I don't know if you guys understand. The Fabrics Alliance is going to drive the data stack of the internet. Now, I'm sure there's several company representatives, and I represent a company, but I'm realistic to realize we don't have all the smartest people in the room. If we did, then we would have a much better stock price than the one we've had for the last 10 years. The reality is that without a scalable, available, and performant fabric, we won't get to the first two. I know that there's probably folks here from the largest data center on the planet. There's folks who we've all talked to who are members of 3-letter acronym organizations and sometimes 5-letter acronym organizations from around the world. And this is a real problem. The internet is going to double in 2013 every 9 months, maybe every 7. In 2014, that's going to go to every 6 months. The entire internet. Okay, most of this is user-driven data. Most of this is unstructured data. without a fabric to maintain it, without an intelligent fabric to run intelligent virtual machines and data warehousing capabilities, this whole vision breaks down completely. And I begin to short a lot of stocks. So, for Intel, what does the evolution of the data center really mean? So, Intel's a relative newbie in the server business. Now, we have a lot of market segment share, it's well documented, blah, blah, blah. But we've only really been in the industry about 15 years. But the data center has been under a consolidation phase for about 20 to 25 years. People have been trying to consolidate mini computers and mainframes and departmental servers into a much more structured data center for many years. VMware did an excellent job, in my opinion, of accelerating that at turbo speed. Diane Green and Mendel Rosenblum get a ton of credit, in my mind, for being the leaders there. And there's a lot of great architects who did a great job there. But the fundamentals were that VMware took the x86 market and they accelerated consolidation in a meaningful way. And they didn't forget the fabric. They did a good job of accelerating compute. They did a good job of helping to accelerate storage and building on the work that EMC and Hitachi have been doing for over 15 years. But they also did a very good job of simplifying it for the normal system administrator. And I would argue that that's another challenge that this group needs to face. We need to be able to simplify fabric deployments for system administrators. I understand we can debate the intricacies of what our products are capable of doing. But if a system administrator cannot easily consolidate a fabric, cannot easily dynamically allocate I/O port resources and queue up virtual machines, we haven't done our job. Okay? Something we all need to think about. I do believe that it's going to be a virtualized data center. The data centers that are not virtualized today, that are over 10,000 servers, will be in the future. It's a little bit of a controversial topic. They say they won't. But look at their expenses. Their expenses are going up. Their compute utilization is high at times and low at other times. They're going to actually need to create a dynamic infrastructure with instrumentation that facilitates the use of a virtualized data center. You can say whatever you want, but the economics don't allow you to run a data center without virtualization anymore. It's unfortunate. Virtualization is essentially a free capability. And as the developers of the fabric IOs, as the architects of the future of fabrics, what you do in virtualization is going to be critical. Is it 10 gigabit Ethernet unified networking? I have to say that because that's on the slide. Okay, 10 gig we all know is here and gone, and we're all moving past it. We're all looking at the next thing. Is it InfiniBand? Is it 40 gig? Is it optical? The answer is yes. The answer is absolutely yes. It's all of the above. Okay? It's all of the above. So what is a cloud data center? What is this hype machine that Larry Ellison says is not real? Yet he builds a cloud organization with inside of Oracle. Well, there you go. Cloud is very real, and the cloud data center is critical. Cloud data centers are actually going to allow us to get 15 billion devices on the network. Okay? The networks are going to be very different. Some networks are going to be controlled by governments. Some networks are going to be controlled by private corporations. Some networks are going to be controlled by organizations that we just frankly don't know who they are. All of them are going to buy equipment from everybody in the room. All of them are going to buy equipment from everybody in the room. You're not going to know where most of your equipment goes. Communications infrastructures are going to be proliferate across all economies. If North Africa has not taught us anything, it has taught us that information networks and communication networks are the single most critical factor in people feeling like they are enjoying democracy. And I'm not trying to make this political. I'm just pointing out facts. You can take a look. It's what they're asking for. So if you think that we're not going to see an explosion of this on a global basis, I think you're wrong, and you have very little evidence to support it. The question is, are we going to build technologies that scale, and are we going to allow cloud computing data center managers, our customers? Okay? I'm not political. My customer likes to have a single screen and likes 64 to 68 degree weather. Sits in a raised floor room and goes to sleep with the hum of servers, sometimes while he's sitting at his desk. Okay. That's my customer. That's who I've been working with for my entire professional life. And I was one myself. So I don't try to be political about it. I don't try to say, I understand this grandiose vision about connecting world data. I don't understand that. I understand data centers. I understand that if fabrics aren't easy to put together, if compute and storage area networks are difficult to manage and administrate, if I can't mount applications in real time and reduce my time from development to production from months to minutes, I'm not serving my customer. The cloud data center allows us to build an infrastructure that takes us from months to minutes. The part that becomes a challenge once we go from months to minutes is how do we then scale it? How do we then ensure that we have a cloud infrastructure that provides compliance? I'd like a show of hands. How many people in the room think that governments aren't going to regulate data more over the next 5 years than they have over the last 5 years? Not one person raised their hand, because everybody believes and knows that governments and people who know nothing about technology are going to try to regulate technology more and more and more. So, our job is to make sure that our customers in this cloud infrastructure have the ability to meet all the regulatory issues, to meet all the compliance issues, to meet the normal security issues that we face every day. And do that through a single pane or no more than a 2-pane glass interface. Okay? And that's what cloud computing allows. That's what it's facilitating. And the foundation of cloud computing will be built on today's servers. And as our VP and GM Kirk Skaugen said, just so we're all clear, Intel will ship almost 10 times as many cores over the next 5 years as we shipped in the history of our company. It's a big number. So when you're building these fabrics and you're pegging it to compute cores and you're pegging it to I/O channels, and when we say cores, that's generic. That also means we're shipping more PCIe lanes, we're shipping more memory channels, we're shipping more channels, more I/O, more turbo, more hyperthreading, more Ethernet than we've ever shipped in the history of our company in the next 5 years. This is a massive revolution for us. And as technologists, we have to answer the call, in my opinion. So we're talking about pervasive growth. Cloud computing is here, but what is it? Well, Larry Ellison says it's just the old stuff repackaged in a new marketing term. Well, really? I think what we're discussing over the next 3 days, these fabrics that we're building, how many people think this is the stuff we did 10 years ago when Larry was relevant in technology? Anybody? So, you know, he's got some great technologists, but, I mean, the guy flies off the handle. So the question is the pervasive growth there? I would argue it is there. And it is there in a big way. We're seeing the growth everywhere. We're seeing the growth in government data centers. We're seeing the growth in service provider data centers. We're seeing the growth in education data centers. We're seeing the growth in government. We're seeing the growth in health. We're seeing the growth in financial services. Okay? And everybody wants to get to cloud because it has the illusion that it's going to be able to manage the expansion of data. It has the illusion today that it's going to be able to manage this massive data growth that we are all seeing. I typically ask this question when I do these speeches, and people say, why do you do this? And I'll get to it in a second, and it kind of is the closing of this discussion. But how many people in the room had a smartphone 5 years ago? How many people in the room had a smartphone 3 years ago? How many of the people in the room carry a smartphone today? And the entire room raises their hand. Okay? Smartphones 5 years ago. Can anybody answer how many protocol stacks were on the smartphones? Typically 2. They managed 2 radios. Okay? A GPRS radio, maybe an edge radio. I know because I helped launch the first smartphone in the United States. So it had 2 radios on it. Okay? And we couldn't get Bluetooth to work because we had an inefficient protocol stack. That's a problem. I have a new Android phone from HTC, and I think it's the best phone I've ever owned, and I'm a phone guy, and I really love phones. And I want to tip my cap to the folks at Google because it's a wonderful device. It has 6 radios. 6 radios. It probably has 7, but I didn't count them all. It has Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPRS, Edge, HSUPA, HSDPA. I mean, it's an amazing device. It has 6 radios, and it has a USB connection. So the driver stack alone for this phone surpasses the computers we were shipping less than 4 years ago. The driver stack for a smartphone device. Google said that they're activating 300,000 phones a day, Android devices. I have a 32 gigabyte hard drive. How am I going to manage all that data in the cloud? What kind of fabric am I going to manage that with? This is where the growth is coming. This is where we're seeing a lot of the growth. So we built this vision at Intel, and we're building our company around this vision. Its vision's based upon real data. It's based upon real fundamental changes. It's based upon what we're seeing. We believe that there's going to be a federated infrastructure, shared data securely across public and private clouds. We think that's critical. We think that if you cannot move virtual machines and workloads from a public Amazon, Google type, Microsoft, Azure type infrastructure back to your private infrastructure, then the promise of cloud computing is lost. Okay? We think it's going to be automated. We can't imagine. You know, I happen to live in Oregon, and we have a lot of data centers in Oregon. We have more data centers and servers than people. Little known fact. We don't have a lot of people, so it's pretty easy. But we have about 3.5 million people, to give you a perspective. When some of our data center customers, I won't name any names, launch new facilities with multiple hundreds of thousands of servers, almost 500,000 servers, it takes less than 40 people to monitor that facility 24/7. Fast forward in a year, their data infrastructure is going to double. It's going to double. Are they going to add 40 people, or are they going to buy the most automated and efficient tool sets that they can get their hands on at whatever cost? The answer is probably the latter. So we believe automation is critical to the future of cloud computing. And then finally, client aware. In 2006, we forecasted the smartphone market at 32 million units worldwide. Anybody guess how many units of smartphones are going to ship this year? Estimates are between 320 and 480 million units, depending on who you believe and the economic prognosticators. I think it's probably going to land somewhere around 460 myself, personally. So about 460 million. We'll ship almost 200 million, slightly over 200 million PCs between Intel and AMD and our OEM customers. And there'll be over 1.5 billion client devices shipped in 2011. That is an astronomical number of devices. Okay? And they all have to be managed. If you were to tell somebody, hey, I can buy a smartphone and it doesn't have to be managed on my PC, and oh, by the way, in 2 years, when I buy a smartphone, all my contacts are loaded on that smartphone, they can just be lost because they don't have to be managed in a server infrastructure. They don't have to be managed in a data center. If Google believes they're going to grow Android to 20% of the market, and Apple believes they're going to grow iPhones to 20% of that market, really 20%, not single-digit percentage, and they're not going to have to manage people's worlds in clouds, I think that's foolish. Okay? So we believe client aware is critical. And the key to all this is open and interoperable solutions. We think that is essential. Well, when you say open and interoperable, you're saying compatible protocol stacks. And and protocol stacks that scale, and protocol stacks that are available, and protocol stacks that can be developed by a very large ecosystem. And we think in this open data center requirements, you need efficiency, because you have to optimize technology to decrease human and energy consumption. Oil touched 108. Nuclear is probably not an option anytime soon, unfortunately. That's actually not a joke, but that's a tragic event. But politically, it's probably not an option. Okay, so leaves us with renewables and coal, and both are very costly, and both are very, very expensive, and both require a massive infrastructure investment. So what we do in terms of the future and building the products that we build has to involve energy efficiency. Has to. It has to be simple. How many people believe that we have an unlimited supply of copper? Anybody seen copper prices lately? We can't continue to say, hey, I'm going to put a 64-port Ethernet infrastructure off the back end of your cloud infrastructure, and we're just going to pull cables all day long. We can't do that. We've got to be able to consolidate fabrics. Okay? Has anybody here ever had a cable management issue in a data center? If you didn't, I'm not sure why you're here. I mean, you know, cable management is a problem. Okay? And we don't have an unlimited supply of copper and cables and ports. We just don't. Security. We have to reduce the risk. Cyber threats are escalating every day. I know cyber threats are bad when I go in and the teller at the bank says, be careful when you go online because, you know, we've got cybersecurity issues all the time. That's the teller at the bank. I mean, you know, that's like when the taxi cab driver tells you to buy a stock. No, it's time to get out, right? So, you know, we have to address this in the future of the data center. So what we're doing at Intel, okay? We're working with a consortium of, an alliance of open data center industry executives. I'm not sure that every one of you doesn't have a customer who's a member of the Open Data Center Alliance. I would be extremely surprised. And so they've come together and they're building a usage model roadmap. And this usage model roadmap is about defining and prioritizing IT requirements in the cloud. I think it's a pretty big deal. They represent almost $100 billion in IT spend. Okay? Is everything they're going to come out revolutionary? Is it going to be the kind of stuff where we go out and build new fabrics because of what they ask for? No. But it's pretty nice to have end users tell us what they want and the criteria that they need to go by. It makes those product development discussions that everybody in this room's had a lot easier to have because we're actually going from some good data points. Intel's going to build products and technologies. I told you we're going to ship more cores over the next 5 years than we've shipped in the history of our company. We're excited about those prospects. We're also going to continue to grow our 10 gigabit Ethernet business. That's obvious. And we're entering the storage marketplace. And we just bought a security company. Okay? So we're going to continue to innovate. We launched a program called Intel Cloud Builders that we think is pretty innovative. We actually build and test these infrastructures that IT and service providers can deploy. We work with OEMs, HP, IBM, Dell, Cisco, Fujitsu, Huawei. Okay? We work with as many of the solution providers in the software space that we can. And in the future, I'd like to find a way to work with the fabric guys like yourselves. Because again, the fabric, whether it's InfiniBand, whether it's Fiber Channel over Ethernet, whether it's iWarp, whether it's Rocky, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. So for us, for Intel, and this didn't come out very well on the slide here. I apologize for the formatting. I thought it was better. There's 5 areas that we focus on. Automation for dynamic workload placement. This is the future of our architecture. I'm not going to get into specifics because I'm not allowed to today. But I'm going to tell you these are the 5 areas that you're going to see Intel innovating in. Efficient performance, trust and compliance, networking, and storage. In networking, we're really going to focus on unified fabrics and cost-effective networking, networking scaling. We think scale is a big deal. In security, trust, and migration, I love the fact that Paul talked about migration as a key to the future, because we see it as that as well. Migration is difficult. Migration has compatibility issues. When you migrate from older architectures to newer architectures, how do you ensure that you actually keep not only the protocol stacks, but the driver stacks and the performance at the same level? Future of cloud computing says that you do that. Future of cloud computing says that you have different levels and service levels inside a data center. So that means you're going to have different fabric levels. And if you can dynamically allocate your InfiniBand fabric, that's probably a lot of value, not just in the HPC arena, but there's some workloads that need to perform at a different level on certain times of the month. Okay? End of month close as an example. Having a quality of service level fabric infrastructure, probably pretty valuable. So our future data center architecture vision is about flexibility for IT and service providers. So this is a slide, and I borrowed this from someone you all know, Tom Stakora. So Tom, thank you very much for allowing me to use this slide. But I actually have a different spin on it. So Tom probably won't agree with my spin, but I'm going to give it anyway. There's a consensus around here that us hardware folks, how many people in here consider themselves hardware folks? Paul certainly did. I've worked at a software company. It lasted about 9 months. I'm a hardware geek. That's really all I know. I know how to build engines. Sorry. I'm not a software guy. And so there's always this fear as software guys. Analysts always tell us as hardware guys that software is ruling the world, software is the future, it's all about software, it's all about software. And you know what? You guys don't really matter much anyway. We're just going to abstract you because, you don't really matter. So are servers and networking becoming abstracted? I say in cloud computing, absolutely not. It goes the other way. I say the software is actually not keeping up. The software's capabilities is not keeping up to the demands, and so that's why you're having to virtualize it, because it's not able to scale. Remember, Larry Ellison talked about MPP architectures were bad for business 15 years ago. Do you guys remember that? I did. I said, it's all about SMP. Do you guys remember that? Does anybody remember that? SMP? Talk about symmetrical multiprocessing and consolidating databases and not programming in the old model. Right? The old parallel model and the massively parallel compute infrastructure. Okay, that was the IBM way. And yet, cloud and virtualization is taking us which way? Towards a parallel infrastructure, towards a massively parallel programming model, where we're programming in bits and bytes and we're trying to create scalable infrastructures that can consolidate and shrink as the workloads require. So when you have a flexible infrastructure like that, what is the most paramount thing that you need? You need server and networking hardware that can meet multiple protocol stacks, can shrink and grow as required, can perform at a very high level, has the ability to offload and put workloads where required in a service level inside of a data center that's meaningful. That's a big deal. So for me, when I look at cloud computing, I say, hey, we're back in business. We matter again. Because if you're going into cloud computing, if cloud computing is critically important to you, and you're a software developer, if you don't have the converged network infrastructure, if you don't have the protocol stack, if you don't have the storage software, the storage hardware performance capabilities, then your cloud is going to be pretty run-of-the-mill. And instead of being able to charge a premium to your customers for capabilities, you're going to have to charge basic costs because you haven't been able to develop a quality of service layer with the available fabrics that are out there. If I could build a network with InfiniBand and it was cost effective, I would. But I can't, so I don't. But part of my network fabric infrastructure needs to run on InfiniBand. Part of my network fabric infrastructure needs to run on 10 gig. Part of my network fabric infrastructure needs to determine whether I want to run with Rocky or whether I want to run with iWarp. You need to have that capability and that flexibility. And so hardware matters. And standards matters. And I'm not going to talk about Intel 10 gig. Okay? We have a product you guys all know. Okay? We've got leaders from the industry here to talk about those products. The importance of this slide is really about an open architecture. It's about standards of a unified network. Whether you're from Broadcom, whether you're from Brocade, whether you're from Mellanox, I urge you to ensure that your infrastructure has the protocol standards, has the flexibility. You know, at Intel, we'll compete. Well, you know, that's what we do. We'll find a way to compete. But we all need to find a way in this room to innovate. Because you cannot build an exabyte data center infrastructure without a flexible fabric. Cannot be done. So, in this guy's opinion, protocols are the key to the cloud. Protocols are the key to the cloud. iWarp versus Rocky. I don't care. iSCSI versus Fiber Channel over Ethernet. Okay. SOR-IOV versus RDMA. Implementation decisions. TCP/IP, Edge, 3G, 4G, WiMAX, Wi-Fi, HSUPA. This is not yes is the answer. Protocols are everywhere, and protocols provide service level agreements that we make with our customers. So the future of cloud computing, frankly, I don't think it's protocols gone wild. I think it's protocols in having an opportunity to come to the forefront. Because as people want the flexibility of a dynamic data center infrastructure, as in my particular example, I want to have my smartphone have capabilities wherever I go, whatever network I'm on, I need all of these protocols. And I need them to function, I need them to be dynamic, and I need them to work. So, for us to get to 2015, we need protocols. Any questions? Well, I'm in between you and lunch. Don't want to hold you up. Thank you very much.